I'm finally back, and today I have brought a really fun video with me, or at least a very fun system with me, and that is an inventory system that allows stacks of items. Now, inventories can seem really daunting or complex, but in truth, they're actually really simple. Once you kind of understand how to store data inside of arrays, or in our case, dictionaries, things like this become really easy to do and kind of easy to replicate as you work on other things. Now, as I said, this is going to be a stackable inventory system, so we're going to need to do some interesting things with dictionaries, but the first thing we're going to want to look at is the scene that I have in front of us. This scene is just really simple. If I hit play here, you'll see all it is like just a little moving character. That's it. There's nothing else going on here, just a moving character. These buildings don't have collisions, nothing has collisions, just a moving character. So what's the first thing that we should work on? Well, the first thing that we should really work on here is going to be a collectible, or at least get something that can respond to the character walking over it, so we can get that collision kind of handled. So to do that, I'm going to create a new scene. Now, this can be of 2D scene, or it can be of area 2D. Doesn't really matter which one you use. Area 2D will be part of this anyway. I guess just making it a node 2D and then adding an area 2D to it is a little bit of extra memory if you really care that much about that. So that's kind of your choice. I'm going to just make this a node 2D. I'm going to rename it to collectible. Did I spell collectible correctly? I did. And then I'm going to use Control-Shift-A, and not Control-Shift-A, Control-A to add an Area 2D to this. Now, Area 2Ds, of course, need a collision shape, so they can actually collide with things. So let's do that. Collision shape, I'm just going to create a new circle shape right here. It's really small, it doesn't need to be that big, it just needs to kind of exist. So I'm going to hit Control-S, I'm going to save. I'm going to save this under my scenes folder, and let's save it under, just save it under entity, and we'll create a new folder and we'll call it collectibles. Then I'm going to hit save there. So with that done, the next thing we need to do is add a script to our collectible so we can start kind of programming out the actual collision detection, right? So to do that, we don't actually need to do anything that kind of big. Actually, there's one thing we need to add to this. I'm forgetting already. Let's use Control-A whilst hovering over or selecting the collectible node we just created and add a sprite 2D. We're going to want, an image for our collectible so we can actually see what's going on. Let's go and add an image to this. So under the assets, so I'm using Kenny Tiny Dungeon and Kenny Tiny Town packs for this. You can get them at the Kenny NL website. A link for that will be in the description below, so go check that out if you're looking for some easy to use assets. So I'm going to go under, let's go Tiny Town, let's go under tiles, and let's have a quick scroll through. We will start this off with, I'm in the wrong asset pack, it is in the Tiny Dungeon one, there we go. I want to start this off as a simple health potion. Now, there we go. Tile 115 is our simple health potion, so I'm going to click and drag that to our texture. And now we have this simple looking health potion looking item. Make Control-S and save. Go to our world. Under the entity container here, hit Control-Shift-A to add. And I'm going to add the collectible. I'm just going to move that around. Let's put it in the scene somewhere. Let's just put it here. Hit Control-S and save. Now, if I press play and I go and walk over this with the character, nothing should happen. There is a small issue being it's always on top of our character because, well, that's kind of how we have our scene ordered here. So let's go and fix that really quickly by clicking the entity container or whichever container you are storing it in. I like to separate my scene trees like this, where I have a level container, an entity container, and then a UI container, and kind of so on and so forth. So I'm going to click the entity container, come down to the ordering, and then Y-sort enabled, hit play. And we'll go try that again, and there you go. Now, it is in front of our character when it needs to be, and behind our character when it shouldn't be, or when it should be. Perfect. Let's go back to our collectible, and let's start programming out the collision. So, we don't need access to the ready function or the process function at the moment. The one thing we do need access to is the collision signal on the area 2D. So let's go and click the area 2D. Go to node signals, and we are going to be looking for on body entered, because our character body is or our player is a character body. So body entered, character body, hit connect there. We are now connected. I'm going to do the connections the easy way because that's a bit more understandable for people. And all we're going to do here is we're going to go if body is. Now this is just one of those little check statements where it's just like, okay, if the body is of this specific type or of this thing. Now there's a few ways we can do this. We could do a group check to see if the body is inside of a specific group, or we could do a class check. Now I'm going to do a class check. Now a class check, if I go over to my player here and I go to my player script, scroll all the way up, you'll see that I have given it the class name player entity. Now if you aren't using class names, that's okay. You can just click your player, go to groups, and you can add a group here. Well, I'll do this because I can, just call it the player group, come back to collectible, and then I can go if body dot is underscore in group player. I can then do something. So right now we'll just go, we'll go print is player, and then I'll hit Control S and save. Now we'll click play and we will go and run over this and see what happens. So is player. It is printing in the console down there that this is the player. So once again, if you're not using classes, this is another way that you could do it with groups, but I am using classes and I prefer to use classes for a lot of the things that I do. So what I can do here, I can go if body is player entity, and then I can go and do my check. So go print, go body is player entity, hit Control S and save, and now hit play and run over it, and body is player entity. Now as a quick check to make sure that this is working, I can go if not body is, that's basically just saying, hey, if the body is not this thing, type this or print this. As you can see, it's no longer printing anything because this is a player entity. Sorry if that got a little bit confusing, but I really like using classes for this stuff as checks. It just kind of makes life easier. So now what we have to do is actually configure our item, right? So we have this actually being collected, or we have the trigger for it. So our player walks over it and now we can do something when the player actually collides with it or walks over it in this case, or enters its area. What we're going to want to do here is actually pick up an item. Now there's a few ways you could do this. You could have basically inherited scenes that are items in themselves, or you could do it the very, very simple way, and what my preferred way is resources. Everything in Godot is a resource, right? Nodes are resources, just everything is a resource. Now resources are really, really good ways of storing data. So we are going to use resources to basically do things with our items or have individual items. Now what do I mean by that? Well, let me just show you. Under my scenes folder, I'm going to create a new folder and I'm going to call it resources. Now under resources, I'm going to create one more new folder and I'm going to call this items. Now what I can do here under the items is I can create a new script and I can just call this item.gd, or I could call it, let's do this in a more pronounced way, item data. So this script itself will be called itemdata.gd. Now we have the script, we need to do a few things to it to make it a resource. First thing we want to do is the extends here. We want to change extends to resource. And then we want to give it a class name. So let's go and give it a class underscore name of item data. And now we have our resource that we can kind of duplicate and use as much as we want. That'll just be a simple storage device. But we need to actually give it some variables to store things, right? So let's go and give it a few of those. I'm going to do 4. I'm going to go at export. So this is an exported variable that we can edit in the inspector. We'll go var. We'll go item underscore ID, and we'll set that equal to, let's just do a number value. So we'll go an integer and we'll set it equal to 000 for now. That won't work. We'll just go 0 for now. Now let's do another exported var. We'll call this the item underscore, let's go name. So name, which is of type string. And we'll set that equal to just nothing really. It can just be an empty string. Next one we'll go var item underscore. Yeah, we want the texture next, so let's go and do the texture. My hands are typing faster than my brain can think again. That's always a fun thing to be doing. So our item texture will be of type texture 2D. So that will be the PNG files that we supply the actual texture itself, right? So that's what we're going to want. We're going to set that equal to null. And then finally, the one that we're going to, like, this is one of those hard to kind of guess things, but I'm going to kind of leave the values here up to you guys. We're going to go at export underscore range. Now we're going to export a range. I'm going to do a range between 0 and 99. I'm going to write var item underscore stack underscore size of type integer, and I'll set that equal to 1. So what is this going to be for? Well, the stack size specifically is literally just going to be how high do I want an item to stack to, and I'm presetting that to 1. So for items like pickaxes, swords, single like keys, things that you can only have one of, they will be preset to 1 and I will never need to touch it again. But for say potions and things like that, I can change that stack size to a maximum of 99 in the editor. I will have to go into the code to change that to a higher value than 99. It just allows you to set in predefined caps for things. For, say, if you're working with other people, they can just use a slider or type in a number that goes up to a certain point and then it caps out at a certain point. Really easy for balancing and things like that, because you can sit there and go, okay, 99 just isn't enough, let's add an extra 0 onto that and go 999. That is now enough of an item. And in some games, that's actually what's happened. I think Terraria, that happened a really long time ago, where it's like, this item wasn't stacking enough, have an extra 0's worth. So just one of those things to keep in mind. This allows you to kind of do that on the fly with massive amounts of data. So let's go hit Control S and save our item data.gd. This is it. This is our entire storage device for our item data. So now what we need to do is let's go to the collectible.gd again, and let's create an at exported var. I can't spell the word export. Var, there we go. We're going to call this the collectible underscore data of type item data, and we'll set it equal to null. And we're also going to need to grab a reference to the sprite2D. Now, next thing we want to do is hit a function for the ready. So let's access our ready function, and we will grab our sprite2D and we will set the dot texture equal to the collectible data dot item texture. Now, this is why resources are going to be really useful, because now anytime I pass in an item of any kind into this exported variable, it's going to immediately update with its texture. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's hit Control S and save. Under items here, let's create a new folder. I'm going to call this item resources. Actually, no, I won't call it item resources. I won't need to call it anything. We'll just do it in the items folder. We're going to create a new resource, and in the search bar I'm going to write item data, and there you go. There is our custom resource. This resource, let's call it, let's go health potion. We'll do this with potions. Health potion. Now I'm going to double click that, go to the inspector, and you'll see here that we now have our item ID, our name, our texture, and our max stack size. So let's change the name to a health potion. I'm going to leave the item ID at, we'll go, I suppose just 0 will be fine. So a few things, this is like, item ID is, I use item ID for sorting reasons. You don't actually need to have item ID in this at all. It's just one of those things where it's like you can sort, from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, kind of in a numerical order, and that can just be quite useful. That way you can kind of understand when and where items or things were created. Yes, item IDs just allow sorting. So for the health potion, I'm going to leave that at 0. Now, the item texture, I'm going to just go down to our assets here, Kenny Tiny Dungeon, tiles, scroll all the way down to 1115. So here, red potion here is our health potion. Max stack size, we'll set this up to, let's go 5. And that's it, that is our health potion created. Now, what does that mean? Well, let's go and create 2 more items and then kind of we'll go from there. We'll hit Control D and we'll duplicate the health potion and we're going to rename this one to mana potion. Now the mana potion needs to be edited, so make sure we edit this correctly. Mana potion, item ID of 1, and we'll go and change the texture to the blue potion here. We'll go stack size of 3. The stack size is going to be random for just some testing reasons. Now the last one we want to do, so let's go duplicate the mana potion and we will do a stamina potion. So duplicate that. Item ID of 2. Stamina potion. And our texture will be this little green potion here. And we'll make the stack size of 1. I'm going to hit Control S and save. And we now have 3 items created in the span of, what, maybe 5 minutes? Really useful. But you're asking me now, well, we just created all these items, but we don't actually know what any of this does or how to use any of it, right? That's very fair, yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a preset in the collectible data here. I'm going to quick load. So you click the collectible data, click where it says empty, hit quick load, and it will pop up with your potions. You'll notice that it didn't pop up with the mana potion. That's because it's being a bit weird. So I'm going to forcibly throw a mana potion in there. I'm going to hit Control S and save. I'm going to go back into the world. We see that this is a red potion here. Now if I click play, it is still a red potion. Okay, mild technical difficulties over. We now have all 3 potions. If you run into some weird errors like that, by weird errors, whether this stays edited in or not is going to be interesting. Basically, I wouldn't accept one of the resources kind of indefinitely. Just recreate all of the resources from scratch. I think duplicating is where I start to get a bit annoyed with Control D. So just create new items each time for your items. But if I click play, you'll see we have a red, green, and blue potion. Now I'm going to duplicate all 3 of these by left-click selecting them, hitting Control D, duplicating, and moving down. And you know what, we will do this again, and one more time. There's a reason why I'm kind of doing this. Now if I hit play, we have all of our potions here. All of them are working correctly. And by correctly, I mean they are printing out that the body is the player entity. So we now have a pickup or a collectible. What do we want to do from here? Well, we want to actually start kind of adding these to an inventory system of sorts, right? We want to start storing these when we run over them and just being like, well, we are now collecting them, quote unquote, collecting them. So let's start working on our inventory script. To start, what we're going to do is we are going to create a new script. We're not even going to create a new node. We're going to want to create a new script. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down into my scenes folder. Let's close out the entity folder or the art folder here and the assets folder. Go to entity. I have a components folder here. If you don't have a components folder, I was just making one. Now you right click on that, create new, and we're going to want to create a new script. And I'm just going to call this inventory.gd, hit create, and let's open that up. Now, I'm going to remove the ready and process function. I'm going to immediately give this a class underscore name of inventory component. And we are going to do something really fun and specific, and once again, something I haven't done in a while, or done before, I don't think. We are going to remove the extends here. Now, what does that do? Removing extends basically forces this to extend ref counted, which is basically the same as us just going extends ref counted. Why? Because everything comes from ref counted memory reserves. So having nothing there basically makes it ref counted anyway. So we can just leave ref counted in, and that's what I'm going to do just to make it a bit more visible and clear. And we can start working on our inventory. So what is an inventory? Well, inventory is just a container of data, specifically names, stack size, what the thing is. Okay, so let's narrow that down a bit more. It is a dictionary, so let's go var inventory underscore contents of type dictionary, and also that equal to empty dictionary. So it is a dictionary. That's it, right? It's a dictionary of things. Well, what is a dictionary? A dictionary is a key value pair. So we're going to need a key and a value. So what we're going to do here to add a stackable inventory is the key is going to be the item. Basically the item instantiated reference, the reference to the actual item itself, and then the value will just be how many there are in the inventory. Now, there are a few different ways of doing this. There are better ways of doing this. This is just kind of what I came up with in my spare time because it was fun. So to do that, let's first create a function for adding an item. So let's go func add underscore item. It's going to need to take in an item, which is of type item data. So that's the item we just created. We'll return nothing. And we just need to go and do a few checks. The first thing we want to do is we want to check if the inventory contents dot has, and we want to pass in a variant. Well, that variant is going to be that item. So if it does have this item already, what do we want to do? Well, if it has the item already, we want to then check, right? Because we're doing stacking, we want to check if the inventory contents, and that will use an array accessor like so for the item. So we can check the exact key. We want to check the item. We want to go is less than. So the value that returns is less than the item dot that's a slash dot item stack size. And this is literally just checking if we have hit the stack cap or not. If we haven't, what we want to do is just increase that value. So let's go inventory contents with the accessor for item plus equals 1. So if we have this item in our inventory and we have, say, one of them and the stack size is 3, we can increment that by 1. And if we pick up another one, we can increment it again. Now, what happens if we hit our stack size or go above our stack size? Well, this is where the else statement comes in. Else return. We literally just wanted to say, nope, if you have hit that stack, do nothing. We don't want you to do anything else. And now we need to do one more else statement here for the original if statement. So let's go else. What do we want to do? Well, think about this for a second, right? If we have the item, do this. If we've hit the cap, if we don't have the stack size, add 1 to it. If we do have the stack size, do nothing. So this should be if we don't have the item, what do we want to do? Well, we want to grab the inventory contents and then, add in that key for the item, and we want to set that equal to 1. So this is the key, and this is the value pair. So we are now saying we now have one of these items. We can pretty much just iterate over this a lot, right? Because now that we've added this, we can do this check again and see if we hit the stack size. If not, we can add 1 to it, and we can just kind of keep going through like that. And that is the simplest way of adding an item. Now, to skip ahead a real tiny bit, I want to very quickly add a signal into this for update underscore inventory underscore UI. Now, this won't come into play for a little while, but it's one of those things where it's just, I'm going to just add it so we can be prepared for it. And then I'm going to fire that after this else statement here. So dot emit, like so. And that's pretty much it. That's our inventory. So we are now adding to our inventory. Let's add I want to add a remove item function, but I think that's going to be for a later video on maybe something that actually uses the inventory. For now, you really need to know how to add items. So let's go func, and we are going to add a kind of get the contents, right? So we need to see what is actually in our inventory. We can go and add a getter for that. So get inventory underscore contents. It will take no parameters, but it will return a dictionary. What dictionary will it return? Well, not return, I can't spell. Return the inventory contents. And that is it. That is a extremely simple stackable inventory ready to go. I said, removing or actually removing items from an inventory is really, really simple. You just iterate over the dictionary, you find the item that you want to remove, minus equals 1, kind of done. And when you hit 0, remove the key itself from the dictionary. So that's kind of how it works. Because I want to do something very specific with it, we'll move into that at some other point. So with this done, let's actually go back to our original collectible and actually start doing something with it, right? What do we want to do here? Well, first, we want to make sure that we know what we're picking up. So let's use this print statement for that. We'll go print body.name plus, we'll write found. We'll add a colon there, and then we'll write plus let's grab the collectible data dot item name. So when we walk over this, let's hit Control S and save. Let's go and hit play and just make sure this runs. If I walk over this health potion, it will say found stamina potion. That's acting a little weird. Did I forget to change certain things, or am I being kind of dumb? That's a health potion. That's a mana potion. And that's a stamina potion. Okay, let's try that again. Apparently I forgot to change the item names. Health potion, stamina potion, mana potion. Okay, so those work. We are now differentiating between the items on the floor, and we can print that out and see that that's what's happening. Now we want to do some fun things, right? We want to go and figure out how to add this to our inventory, and this is going to be the easiest way of doing it. We want to use the collectible to sit there and go, well, we know that the body will probably have the inventory, and the body needs to add that to the collectible. Now, there are some prerequisites to this. First, we need to go to the player, and we need to give it access to the inventory. So to do that, we're just going to give our player a var inventory underscore component. We'll set that equal to inventory component equal inventory component dot new. There we go. The type setting for this is not really something you need to do. This is kind of a bit overkill, but we'll do it anyway. So all this is doing is instantiating a new inventory component for the player. So we now have a new inventory component, and this is where the ref counted thing comes in. Ref counted will basically delete itself from existence if nothing is referencing it. So in this case, this is now being referenced, therefore an inventory component exists. So with that done, we can now come back to our collectible, and we can go if body dot inventory component. So now I can access that. Well, what is our inventory component missing right now? A check inventory function, right? We need to know if that, or if this inventory, or if this collectible can be collected. And this is where some of the hoops kind of come in with inventory systems. Let's go to the inventory again, and let's create a new function. We'll do it just below add item. We'll go func check underscore inventory underscore contents. It's going to need to take an item of type item data, and it's going to need to return a boolean. Now this is one of those moments again where I say there are other ways of doing this. This is just kind of the way that I figured out how to do this. I like having extra steps in certain places. So what we want to do is we want to go if the inventory contents dot has this item. So to put this very bluntly, we're basically going to be doing the same thing as this without the incrementation. So if it has this item, what do we want to do? Well, we want to then check if, actually, Yeah. We want to then check if the inventory contents of the item is less than the item.item stack size. And if it is, we want to return something. Well, in this case, we want to return true. Why? Because this basically means we can add to the inventory. That's kind of what this if statement is saying. Now, this might get a bit confusing. If else's kind of do that, especially with Boolean returns. It broke me for a while figuring this out. So after that, we want to go to an else statement. Well, we want to go else return false. Now, this if statement is saying if we are under max stack size, we can add to it. If we are not, then we cannot add to it. But that is only if we have the item. If we don't have the item, what do we want to do here? Well, we want to go else and return true. That means we can add to the dictionary. And that's it. That is as simple of a check as you can possibly get without doing too much if else foo. So let's go back to our collectible. Sorry if that got a bit confusing. And let's do some better checks in our collectible. So we'll go if body.inventory component dot check underscore. Did I save that? Make sure. There we go. Dot check underscore inventory. I'm going to do the smart thing here. I'm going to come to the inventory function. I'm going to hit Control C and I'm going to hit Control V and paste. And then I'm going to kind of pass through the collectible data, and we need to make sure that this returns true. So if this returns true, so if that function we just created returns true, what do we want to do? Well, we want to go body dot inventory component dot add underscore item, and we want to add the item. Now I'm going to check something. This really might just be me overkilling this, but I hate it when Godot is being a bit weird. Oh, it's just going to be weird. Okay. It can be as weird as it wants. So what do we want to do here? Well, we want to add the item and we want to pass through that collectible data. Hit Control S and save. And now we want to queue free the original item that was on the floor so we don't pick it up again. We'll do a quick else statement here and we will print, let's go and print max stacks, because that's pretty much the only reason you shouldn't pick up an item is if we are at max stacks. And that is pretty much the entire inventory picked up. So let's go and hit play. Let's go and walk over the health potion. Player found health potion, stamina potion, mana potion, and it is now working. But as you can see, our stamina potion has a max stack size of 1. It has hit max stacks. Our mana potion, it has a max stack of 3, I think, or 4. And our health potion has a max stack of 5. So you can see here that we're not picking up certain items, we are picking up others, which means our stacking is working. Now, to add to our happiness here, I'm going to very quickly just print out. We will do this. We'll do this in the inventory itself, and we will do it under add item here. We will just print out the inventory contents and hit Control S and save, and we'll do that again. That way you can see what's actually going on. So we have the health potion, which is 1 of them. Now we have 2 of them, 3 of them, and 4 of them. Stamina potion is now after that, so stamina potion 1, max stacks, so it won't increase the stack size. Let's go. Mana potion is the final one now, and you'll see there we are increasing, and we have this, dictionary-based inventory system ready to go. So with the inventory actually being populated, what do we want to move on to next? Well, the next part is the what I like to call the stressful part for me, because it's all UI based. The next thing is literally just setting up a little UI for us to do. So let's go and do that now. So moving on to the actual UI portion of this, UI is always a bit of a nightmare. So I always have a set amount of settings just kind of slapped into a document that I can just copy, because UI is very it's up to the individual. It really is. How you position your UI, how you make it look, entirely up to you. So I have a few settings that I'm going to kind of go through and explain as we create it. So what do we want to do here? Well, let's create a new scene, and let's create it of type other node, and this will be of type panel container. So we are going to make this little panel container here. I'm going to change the name of this panel container to inventory underscore UI. I'm going to hit hit enter, and then I'm going to hit Control S and save. Now I'm going to go save this under a new folder under my scenes folder. New folder. I'm going to just call this folder the UI folder, and I'm going to save this in there. Now, for the inventory UI, I need to do some specific things just to get it actually set up correctly. Now, if I go under the layout and I go under container sizing, what I want here is I want the horizontal to be shrink to center, and I want it to be expand, and that's pretty much it. That should set this up correctly to do what we need it to. If it doesn't, then there will be a lot of me panicking and trying to figure it out on the fly. So let's add a margin container now to our inventory UI. So let's go Control A, type in margin container, hit Control S and save. I'm going to immediately go down to theme overrides, constants, and for margin, I'm going to have a 12 pixel margin. That's quite literally all the margin container is. It's just a buffer. It gives you 12 pixels on each side. That's what we've set it to, of kind of clear space, so it doesn't look like it's all squished up on the side of the screen. Now, inside that margin container, I'm going to hit Control A, and I'm going to add a VBox container. I'm going to hit Control S and save. Now, the VBox container, if we go down to theme overrides, constants, and we go to the separation, I'm going to immediately add this as a 30 separation. Now, that won't be completely understandable on why until we add what we need to add. So let's go Control A, and the first thing we're going to add is a label. Now, this label we will rename to title label, and then I'm just going to write the word inventory under that label. Now, I need to change some things with this. Horizontal alignment, we're going to do center, and vertical alignment, we're going to do center. Come down to theme overrides, constants, not constants, fonts, font sizes, there we go. And I want to set this to a 38 font, which makes this pretty big. So let's hit Control S and save. Now let's add a Control A to our VBox container specifically. We're going to add a grid container, because inventories are commonly, or at least classically, inside of grids. I'm going to set the number of columns in my grid container to 8. Then I'm going to come down to theme overrides, constants, and you've got the separation here. So I'm going to do 10 pixels on the H separation and 20 pixels on the V separation. Now, as that, when we actually populate this, it will actually make sense on why I'm doing these things, but just follow along for now and you will kind of end up with something really neat looking. So last thing we're going to add to the VBox container, of course, is a button. This button is quite literally just going to be the exit button. So let's call this the exit button, and we will write close on it. Now, the button needs to have certain minimums and maximums set, otherwise it's just going to kind of expand and stretch and do a bunch of interesting things. So let's go down to layout. We'll go custom minimum size of 82 pixels on the X and 24 in the Y. Hit Control S and save. Make sure everything is set correctly, and it is. And this is it. This is our inventory created. Now, I'm going to add a script to the inventory UI here. I'm going to give it a class underscore name of inventory underscore UI. Now, usually I don't like, actually, we'll remove, I was going to say, usually I don't add the underscore here, but we won't. Now, we can't actually do anything in this script yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear out the ready button, or the ready and the process function. And I'm going to do the only thing that we can do, and that is just go to the exit button here, click node, signals, button down, connect that signal to our inventory UI. And what do I want to do here? Well, I just want to hide. So all this is going to do is hide the inventory when the inventory is there. So why did I say we can't do anything? Well, we can't populate the grid container with anything yet because we don't have a inventory slot, right? So we need a slot that goes into the inventory that contains the data of the item. So we're going to need to go and design the slot. Now, I originally had an idea to just design the slot inside the grid container originally and then pull it out, put it together properly, and then reinstantiate it. But I'm not going to do that because it took me an hour to figure out how to do that correctly and everything was misaligned anyway, so we're not going to bother. What we're going to do is we are going to write or add a new scene of other node, and we want another panel. We're going to rename this to inventory slot. We're going to use Control A and we're going to add a texture because we're going to want to show our texture. And we're going to use Control A on the inventory slot again, and we will add a stack label to it. Stack label, and by that I mean a label that we will rename to stack label. There we go. I'm going to hit Control S to save. I'm going to save it under the UI folder again. And let's add a texture to this first. So let's go down into our assets folder, art, pull up the inspector real quick. Let's scroll down and find an asset that we want to use. Well, I'm going to just go and grab this axe. Big enough, and as you can see here, if we actually look inside of this, it is kind of pixel to pixel, touching perfectly on each side and going past a little bit. Now, I don't really want that, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the inventory slot. The first thing I need to do, this is a really, really important one to fit with our inventory itself. So I'm going to go layout, and I'm going to change the custom minimum sizes to 84 by 84. Now I'm going to hit Control S and save. Go to the texture rect. I'm going to change the custom minimum sizes on this to 64 by 64. And now we need to center this. So how do we plan on centering this? Well, we can just use stretch mode, keep centered. Nope. We can come up to our inventory or our presets up here for our anchoring, and we can hit center. So we now have a centered inventory slot created. So let's hit Control S and save. And we now need to add a script to this inventory slot. So let's go do that. Let's go and remove the functions, and we will give it a class underscore name of inventory slot. And we need to do a few things. Well, before I said, for the collectible, there is no reason to use unique identifiers for the sprite itself because it will never get moved. This is, when it comes to UI, unique identifiers are always a good idea because you will modify UI more than you will create a game. That I swear that is genuinely what ends up happening is you will spend hours and hours and hours creating this game, and you will spend 4 times that amount of time fiddling with AI. Or UI, not AI, UI. So for our texture rect here, we're going to right click on it. We are going to access as unique name. Now we are going to hold down left click, drag, control, drop. And this will create a unique identifier and an onReady variable. An onReady variable using the unique identifier, which in this case is its name. So we are going to do that for that, and we are going to do it for the stack label again. So now we have these 2 unique identifiers. This basically is it's kind of like combining an onReady and an export variable. So no matter where we move this to, it will basically search its node tree for this name, and it will use this. Really, really, really useful. Is a unique identifier. There's a bunch of reasons to use them that I don't really have the best way of explaining. So moving on. What are we going to need for our inventory slot? Well, we're going to need to know what item we are actually wanting to place in, right? So let's create a variable. We'll call this item underscore data of item. Why do I keep doing L? Of item data. And we'll set it equal to null. So it's preset to null. So why is that item data? There we go. So we are now having our item data. Now we need to set the item. So let's go func set underscore item underscore data. This is going to need to take a new item of type item data, and it's going to need to take a stack underscore size of type integer, and it will need to return void. Now this is going to be really, really useful for us. These are the only two variables that it actually needs to take. New item data, that one kind of makes sense, right? We need to know that, but we also need to know the stack size. Now we're going to do some show and hide magic with stack sizes to make it actually look kind of cool when we're doing our inventory properly. So what do we want to do in here? Well, we want to set our item data equal to the new item first. So we now have a stored variable for that new item. So now what we want to do is set the texture. So I'm going to create a new function for this. This isn't entirely necessary. You can just do this as a one-line function, so it is a bit overkill. But I'm going to do it anyway because reasons. This function will be... So what we now want to do is actually set the texture, right? So let's grab the texture rect, and we'll grab the dot texture. We'll set it equal to the item data dot item texture. So now we're actually accessing that item and we're grabbing the texture. And the final thing we want to do is actually do an if-else statement check. So I'm going to create a new function for this. I'm going to go func set underscore current underscore stack underscore size. We'll pass through the stack of type integer, and it will return nothing because it needs to return nothing. We're just going to go if the stack is greater than 1. So if we have more than one item, we want to grab that stack label. We just want to go dot show. And then we want to go stack label dot text and set that equal to the str value or string value for the stack that we've passed through. Else, what do we want to do? Well, we want to return. One thing you can also do here is you can go else hide. So stack label dot hide, and this will very literally just hide that stack label for us. So if we only have one item, there will be no extra text on screen. But if we have multiple items, right, it will appear for us. So let's come here, let's go to the stack label, and let's just add 12. So what's the first thing we notice here? Well, first thing we notice is the stack label isn't actually in the place we want it to be, right? So let's go to the anchoring and let's move it to the bottom right corner. Now let's go to horizontal alignment and we'll set that to center, or we could do right. Right seems good. Let's do right. There we go. Hit Control S and save, and now we have a visible stack label. So what it won't look, or what it will look like if there is only one, what it will look like if there are multiple. I'm going to leave this hidden for now. Hit Control S and save. Go back to the script, and actually we don't really need to go back to the script. That's it. That's our entire script done. What we can do now, however, is move back to the inventory UI. So let's go and create this script real quick. To show this off in the grid container control, I'm going to use Control Shift A, and I'm going to add the inventory slot, and then I'm going to duplicate this a bunch of times. I'll do one more, and there you go. This is what our inventory will look like. They will just have different items inside of here. So, and different values for items, but that is a pretty clean looking inventory with the settings that we're using. So let's delete all of those now that you know what it looks like. Let's go back to the script and let's actually kind of automate the script adding and things. So first thing I'm going to do is we're going to export a variable for the inventory underscore slot, because we're going to want to add that via code. So let's go, or populate that via code. Let's go packed scene, because that's what it is. And we'll set it equal to null. Now I'm going to go up to the inventory UI here, click on it, go to the inventory slot, hit quick load, and find the inventory slot. Done. Now what we want to do is we want to grab our grid container. Now once again, because it's UI, I'm going to use a unique name for it. I'm going to control drop inside, and we now have our grid container. And we can now create the function. So let's go func create for populate the inventory. So that's pretty much all this function is going to do, is populate the inventory. So what is it going to need? Well, it's going to need the inventory to populate, right? So let's pass through the inventory as a reference, inventory of type inventory component. So for populating the inventory, one of the things we're going to want to first start with is a for loop, right? We want to kind of do something X amount of times, and the easiest way of doing that is a for loop. So let's go for the item inside or in the inventory dot get inventory contents. So this is going to return the amount of for each item basically. So for every item that is inside of the inventory that we are pulling back, we're going to want to first create a new inventory slot for that item. So var new, now let's call it a new slot, and we'll set it equal to the inventory slot dot instantiate, and we will instantiate that as an inventory slot. Now the reason I'm doing as inventory slot just allows us to get some auto completion, really useful. The next thing we want to do is add that specific inventory slot to the grid container. So grid container dot add child, pass through the new slot. And there's a reason we're doing it in this order. You need to add the new slot first, like as a child first, because it has on ready variables it needs to ready up before we can do any function stuff. So now that it's added and instantiated, we can actually do some things with its functionality. So let's go new slot dot set item data. We want to pass through that item that we're getting from the inventory, and we need to pass through the inventory dot get underscore inventory contents. That is the wrong thing. We want to grab the inventory, not the inventory slot, dot get inventory contents, and we want to pass through the item. Now the way we have to do this, right, this is a dictionary that we're pulling back, so we need to access this as we would access a dictionary after the function. So inventory.get inventory contents, parentheses. After those parentheses, we want to open up our square bracket accessor. We want to use the word item for the specific key we want to grab. So we are now getting the stack size and the actual item itself and adding that to our inventory slot. So if I hit Control S and save, I'm going to do. So if I hit Control S and save, we now need to pretty much go and connect this inside of our world somehow, right? We need to actually get this kind of running. So easy way to do this, let's go to our world scene, so our primary scene. I'm going to go to my world, I'm going to go add a child for the canvas layer. There we go. So canvas layers are, it says here, a node used for independent rendering of objects within a 2D scene. So things we want to use for UI. Now I'm going to rename this canvas layer to UI underscore container. There we go. And now I'm going to use Control Shift A, and I'm going to add the inventory UI to it, but I'm going to hide the inventory UI. Hit Control S and save. Now I'm going to add a script to the UI container real quick. And we just need to basically do some quick functionality things in here. So first thing we're going to want to do is get access to the inventory UI as a unique scene name. So let's do that. And drag and drop. There we go. We have that. So the next thing to do is do that with the player. Now, once again, this is where a unique name will be useful, or you could do a group specific setting. So, and probably helps if I say this. Yeah, we need to get access to the player. We will use the. So the next thing we want to do is get access to the player. Now we're going to do that again as a unique name. So we're going to pull this over to here and be done with that. Done. Player entity, inventory UI, done. Now personally, when it comes to this, I prefer to do an exported variable, but we did this will be fine. Next thing to do is actually do something for our inventory, right? We need to actually have a button to open our inventory. So let's go up to the project settings. Go under input map. And I'm just going to call this the open underscore inventory button. And we will set that to I, hit OK and close. So now we're going to use an unhandled input for this. Now, unhandled input is basically, well, very self-explanatory in the name. It's unhandled input. It's going to handle that input, mark that input as handled, and then kind of be done with it. We can do this in a few different ways. I'm just going to use unhandled input because it has become one of my new favorite things, if I'm being honest with you. So if, in here we're going to quickly do a check for if the input dot is action just pressed, we want to just grab the open inventory button. If it is pressed, we want to go if the inventory UI dot visible is equal to false. What do we want to do? Well, we want to grab the inventory UI and then use dot show. So, if it's visible or if it's invisible, if it's hidden, we want to show it. And then we want to use inventory UI dot populate inventory, and we want to pass through the player dot inventory component. And that's it. That's fully linked. Now I'm going to do a quick return statement, and then I'm going to do an else here, and I'm going to go else inventory UI dot hide. Now this is a really, really quick and simple, quick and dirty toggle for our inventory. So what should happen now is if I go into our game and I walk around and I press I, you see our inventory is in the top left corner. Now as you can see, I walk over this and I press I again, we are getting our inventory updated. But as you can also see, it is kind of stacking things on top of each other every single time I press the button, and it's not updating our individual numbers. So let's go and fix that. First, I want to come to the world here, and I want to grab the inventory, and I want to center this in the screen. So that should make it so the inventory is centered, which it is. It just looks a little bit better. And now we need to go to the inventory UI script here, and we need to do a few little things to our... we need to first create a function for cleaning out the inventory, right? So let's go do that. Just under the populate inventory and inventory UI, we need to go func clean underscore inventory. All this is going to do is, once again, self-explanatory, clean out the inventory's children. So we'll go for item underscore slot in the grid container dot get underscore children. What do we want to do here? Well, we just want to very simply go item slot dot queue free. So we're going to run that at the very start of populating our inventory. So let's go and run that there. And then we are going to run it just before we hide the inventory as well. So that's that kind of going. And now there is the next thing for us to do. So if I come back, this is very, very, we did this a little while ago. Now we can finally come back to it. If I go to the inventory, if I go back to the inventory.gd, we have a signal here that we're firing called update inventory UI. Now, what update inventory UI needs to connect to is actually our inventory UI here. Now, we're going to do this in a really, really fun, somewhat complex way. It's going to be an if-else statement. Super complex, right? All we need to do is go if the inventory dot update inventory UI dot is connected, and this is where the confusing part happens. If it is connected to the populate inventory function, we're going to just print out inventory connected, and then we're going to return. Now, if it is not connected, so else, we actually want to connect it. So to do this, we're going to write inventory dot update inventory UI dot connect, and here's the confusing part, populate inventory dot bind, and we want to pass through the original inventory. So why is this confusing? Well, we're taking the inventory and then we're connecting it to a signal, or we're connecting the signal that is firing to the function that it's currently running in, and then we're binding the inventory itself, or passing through itself. It is a bit of a wacky one to wrap your head around, but it really works quite well. So let's go and test this. Let's hit play. Now let's walk over a potion, press I, our inventory is there, press I multiple times, it's working. Walk over that, automatically updated, walk over that, updated. But as you can see, our stack size is not updating currently. So let's go and fix that. Why is that stack size not updating? Well, if we go over to our inventory slot here, we can see that it is... that set current stack size is not being called. So let's go and do that. Set current stack size, and we want to just pass through the stack size. So hit Control S and save. So once again, inside of the inventory slot, set current stack size was not being called because I'm a dum-dum and forgot that. So let's go and call it after we set the item data. Let's hit play, open our inventory, potion 1, potion 2, potion 3, potion 4, stamina potions, perfect, and mana potions, perfect. So we now have this inventory UI that is automatically updating as we go through. Now, very quickly, this signal is why it's automatically updating. Every time it adds an item, it's rerunning the populate inventory function, and then it's checking if this signal is connected. And because it is actually connected, and after the first time it runs, you can see here it says inventory connected, inventory connected, inventory connected, because it's trying to go through this if else statement and it's returning out early. That stops it from trying to connect every single time. But that is a really, really simplistic, really cute little inventory system on a cute little game with some cute little animations, all done and ready to go. Now, as you can see, it is updating fine. Everything is working. It's just, yeah, it just feels good. Everything's done. So yeah, as I said, I'm back. Videos hopefully every week, you know, all of the recording and stuff is going to be on the way. With that done though, with the inventory done, I want to move on to a crafting system in the future because, well, crafting system is how we're going to be handling like removing of items and kind of covering that a little bit and a little bit more from that. So, you know, if you want to see that, make sure to hit subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. As always, if you have any questions or, you know, pretty much anything you want to say, feel free to leave a comment or come and join us at over at the Discord. A link is in the description. Take care, have a great day and a great game dev journey, and I'll see you next time.